In a time of war, they risked everything they knew and loved. Not for money or a prize, but for their country. They came from our families, they're part of us. Now it's time to follow in their footsteps. As they journey to the battlefields, the oceans and the skies of our wars, 10 Australian families will discover that the past can come alive. Tonight, Nathan searches for a very special hero on the Kokoda track, his uncle, Major Albert Moore, the warrior who didn't fire a shot. It's 1942, and most Australians believe we're about to be invaded by the Japanese. They're in Papua New Guinea, just a few hundred kilometres away, and it's here, on the Kokoda track, that they have to be stopped. It's a bastard of a place. Stinking mud, torrential rainfall and vicious jungle fighting. Over 600 Australians died. Into the middle of this bloodshed strode a man of peace, with just one aim, to take care of these young men. Nearly 70 years later, why he did it is a big question for his descendant, 21-year-old Nathan Folks.
I grew up in a small country town, which has given me a lot of freedom. I'm an easygoing, relaxed sort of person who just likes chilling, having a good time and just doing as much as I can to enjoy life. I study accounting at the University of Ballarat, which takes up a little bit of my time, and I work at the George Hotel as a bar assistant. I have a little fascination for war history, and 2 years ago I was lucky enough to go over to the World War I battlefields and saw my two great uncles' graves in Western France. First time I ever heard of great Uncle Albert would have been Mum telling me about what her grandfather had said about Albert, but he could only tell Mum little bits and pieces. I know he was a Salvation Army volunteer in Kokoda. I reckon he was a pretty selfless man, very patriotic, wanting to do his bit for the country the best way he could through the Salvation Army. I feel very proud of Albert and how he went over there and just tried to help him out, just give him that little bit extra. I'd like to know what motivated him to volunteer with the Salvation Army. If he wanted to go over, why not just join the army instead, but chose the Salvation Army way?
Albert Moore was a bit of a larrikin till he met Violet Muir, a young Salvation Army soldier, and fell in love. Violet wouldn't leave the Salvos, so Albert changed his ways, joined up and married her. Together they had a son, Kelvin, and life was good. Then World War II broke out. Albert's first campaign was in the Middle East. As a Salvation Army officer, he couldn't fight with a gun, so he used a station wagon loaded with supplies instead, driving it through German fire to get to the Australian soldiers. It was a special kind of courage, and Nathan wants to understand where it came from.
In the 12 months that he was in the Middle East, this is where he He gained the experience that made him such an effective welfare officer and able to communicate so well to the troops. And he was the standard that was set. There he is, giving you a salute right there. The hard life, living with the troops and experiencing exactly what they went through fitted him very well for when he went to New Guinea.
Albert came home safely from the Middle East. He had an all too brief few months with Violet and Kelvin, and then it was off to New Guinea. He was twice the age of most of the soldiers, but wherever they were, so was he, dishing out coffee, comfort and care, and they loved him for it.
The little comforts, just a pair of socks, a packet of chewing gum to a soldier on the Kokoda Trail. It was amazing. You know, the cup of coffee that often Albert made must have been the worst coffee in the world. It would have been putrid. But to a soldier in dire straits who hadn't eaten or drunk anything for a while, that cup of coffee was liquid gold.
In understanding Albert, Nathan also learns about another army, the Salvos. Their long tradition of help in hard times found a kindred spirit in Albert, and that raises a question for Nathan.
Yeah, it's him too.
There's a bit about me that I've always wondered if I'd be able to do the same as Albert or the same as any of my other relatives who have fought in any of the wars, if I'd have the same courage, if I'd be able to do what they've done. It's always been a little voice inside the back of the head just questioning if I could do this.
Some of Nathan's questions will be answered here at the Australian War Memorial, and it starts with an unexpected surprise.
That's me, Albert Moore, Chaplain, Salvation Army.
Albert Moore, the soldier of God, is at the heart of the Kokoda Gallery. Even better, Albert gave the memorial his photographs, hundreds of them, and Nathan has never seen them before.
This is my favourite item from Moore's collection, and it's a little bit unusual because soldiers weren't allowed to take cameras into operational areas, but Moore, being, you know, a Salvation Army officer, not actually a member of the army, was probably able to get around it.
Bypass that.
And here we are at the start of the Kokoda campaign, and this is when the Albert Moore story takes a little bit of a shift, because why Moore is important to the broader Kokoda story is because he's one of the first people to actually document it and to track itself and the men who fought there. I'd be immensely proud of what Moore did, of his legacy and of his the fact he made a difference.
Yeah, I've found that from just this little bit of journey that I've got a lot to be proud of and a lot to live up to just to come even close to him.
Carl has one other very special object, something Nathan has been desperate to see, Albert's diaries.
Yeah, this is the first time I've actually seen the diaries. I've been wanting to get a hold of a copy or actually see these for nearly 5 years now, so this is pretty cool just looking at it.
We'll take hold. Turn the pages.
Does it ever make you wonder what's on my mind?
It is something I'll never forget, being able to see those diaries for the first time. To be able to read the words and to hold the originals is just fantastic. Get a slight insight into Albert's thoughts, his emotions during his time overseas.
15th of December 1940, Spencer Street Station. This is the day I've dreaded for many months. Today I leave those whom I love. The most trying experience of my life. My loved ones cling to me and refuse to let me go. Finally farewelled my bonny boy, who to my surprise clung to me like a leech and cried bitterly. This is the last straw. God alone knows my love for this child. The sacrifice is too great, almost too much to bear.
Hey, there's not a cloud in the sky.
The whistle goes and still he's clinging. The train moves out and I have to tear him away. May God know my suffering. My boy and my loved ones gone.
Day you went away.
Michael McKernan, the eminent Australian historian, was the man who brought Albert's diaries into the War Memorial. He remembers Albert well and thinks of him as a true hero.
And I said, Albert, do you want to have these diaries closed? Because they're so intimate. And he said to me, no, Michael. He said, that's what people have to understand. That's what war is like. You lose your loved ones. You go to places you'd never think you'd be going to. So he was such a open and lovely man.
Hey, there's not a cloud in
Look at this. Isn't that just something special?
That's amazing.
It's very moving, isn't it?
Wow, that's just brilliant.
It must make you feel very, very proud.
Oh, I'm blown away. That's massive.
Gives you goosebumps, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does. It's shivers just gone.
Yeah.
Bang.
I say your blue goodbye, and I thought that it would rain the day you went away.
Nathan is not here just to see the memorial. Michael has a surprise for him.
So Nathan, now it's time for you to go to New Guinea.
Bullshit.
No, you're off. Literally to walk in the footsteps of your great-great-uncle Albert Moore.
Wow, that's amazing.
I've put together some packages for you. So there's material in here that's really going to help you to find out everything that anybody can know about Albert Moore.
Let me guess, I can't open them until I'm in a secret location.
That's exactly right. Each spot you go to, there'll be material in here that will help you to find out more about him, learn more about what he did, his service for our troops.
When Michael told me I was going to New Guinea, it was just out there. I had no idea and I was so shocked. It was unbelievable.
Like Nathan, the men sent from Australia to the Kokoda track went eagerly too. They were badly trained and under-equipped and not ready for what they found. As Nathan discovered, even today the track is not an easy place.
We've just arrived in New Guinea and we've just started driving up towards the Kokoda track past McDonald's Corner, and our porters are trying to get our bus out. And if this is anything like Albert's had to deal with, we're going for a very exciting time and trip.
Port Moresby, stumbling block to invasion of Australia.
The battle for New Guinea began when the Japanese landed at Gona and Buna and headed for Port Moresby. The Australians advanced towards them. They would meet in a village called Kokoda.
The Japanese drove swiftly through the Dutch East Indies and on to New Guinea, the very gateway to Australia.
When Albert sailed to New Guinea in 1942, Australia was under attack for the first time in its history. Darwin and Port Moresby had been pounded by Japanese bombs, and now the Japanese were advancing in large numbers across the Kokoda track. But without hesitation, as the Australians advanced towards battle, Albert went with them. Nathan Folkes is about to take his first steps along the same paths his uncle walked all those years ago.
Okay, Nathan.
G'day, how's it going?
John.
Pleasure.
Welcome to Owen's Corner.
Great to be here.
I'm going to take you across the Dakota track.
Thank you very much.
But I want to be very clear. I have the utmost respect for your great-great-uncle, Albert, and the Salvation Army, being ex-military, and all the good work they've done for the soldiers over the years.
I'm learning this very quickly that they did a fair bit.
Before you go though, I've got a couple of items that I'd like you to carry.
Love to.
First one, a backpack. Now, when Albert walked across the track, he had native carriers, the fuzzy wuzzies, helping him. He also carried a 40-pound pack. So I'd like you to carry one very similar.
For sure.
Okay, well done.
Wow, definitely heavier than the last pack I had.
Nathan, I've got something very special. This water bottle is the very bottle that Albert brought back from Kokoda.
Wow, serious?
So I'd like you to take it across the track as a tribute to your great uncle. So let's go across the track.
Love to.
Thanks, mate. Just watch your footsteps as you go across.
Yep.
Make sure throughout the day that every now and then you're having a mouthful of water.
Righto.
How's that water bottle?
Yeah, good. Still good.
Good. Make sure we take good care of that.
I will, for sure.
Now, Nate, this is the Goldie River.
Yep.
Albert would have crossed this many, many times. Would have been coming along with the pack that you're carrying.
And the water bottle.
40 pounds and the water bottle. And with these native carriers, bringing the supplies forward to his little huts.
And I bet it wouldn't be as calm as this either.
No, it wouldn't have been. And sometimes he would do this at night.
Wow.
Because he wanted to get the supplies to the diggers. Now we'll just go slow here and just watch the rocks as we go through.
At first, the Australians were forced to retreat back down the track, fighting a series of desperate delaying battles till the Japanese were just 48 kilometres from Port Moresby. And alongside them was Albert, dispensing comfort from one of his huts.
So, Nate?
Yep.
This was a place called Uberry.
Oh, yeah.
You most probably heard about it.
Yeah, there was...
And Albert set up one of his huts. It's most probably the most famous of all the huts that he had along this track.
Yep. Wow.
If you just look around, just imagine, if you look across to your right, down that track, wounded soldiers making their way back. And there's this guy handing out coffee, handing out biscuits. What do you reckon the diggers was doing?
I reckon they would have been first shocked, then secondly hungry and would have loved it. I reckon it would have been possibly the best thing since sliced bread for them.
And then if you look across to your left, fresh troops are now coming in as we start the advance. They make their way down, cross the Goldie, and they come up here, and once again, here's Albert. Smile on his face, give him an ear, give him a cup of coffee, and he even made scones.
The Australians held back the Japanese army with courage and ferocious determination. Albert recognised their sacrifice and fought against regulations to ensure he was always set up, right where the action was.
Nathan, there are 4 pillars that describe this campaign: courage, endurance, sacrifice, and mateship. Every digger that fought on this track knows exactly what they mean. But there's one that pertains to your great-great-uncle, and that's persistence. They say no, he'd keep knocking on the door. Just remember that. And he was only doing it so that he could assist the diggers.
I look back on these days as among the greatest in my life. Never again do I hope to hear the sighs of relief that I heard during these days as men, utterly exhausted, weak, sick and wounded, would well nigh fall at our feet. I've stood alongside these men, tough Australians, some of them veterans of the Middle East, and after several sips of coffee, they've put down the pannikin, bowed their heads, and silently, the tears of course down their cheeks.
I can't really describe how it feels to be standing where Albert had his very first hut along the Kokoda track at Uberry. It's just a very, very moving experience. Just unbelievable that I'm here on the Kokoda track. To walk in Albert's footsteps along the Kokoda track with his bag and his very own drink bottle is one of the greatest things I have ever done in my life, and I'm so privileged and honoured to have been given the opportunity to do it.
After 2 months of vicious fighting, the Australians pushed back. Japanese supplies had to be carried all the way from the coast, and they had no reinforcements. Now it was them retreating. It was the most punishing terrain imaginable. One of the greatest challenges was a place called the Golden Stairs.
Okay, Nath.
Yep.
This is the foot of the Golden Stairs.
Wow.
And on the northern side, Albert had set up a hut. Well, it was a very, very important hut, especially for the diggers. As the diggers were making their way back, they were either wounded, they were sick, they were suffering from malaria or dysentery, and they got the word that the salvos had set up a hut, and it just gave them just that little bit more
extra oomph
to go that extra hour to get to the hut.
Yeah.
So the engineers built the steps, and the diggers hated it. So you can imagine thousands of steps going up and down, but Albert would have walked up and down those multiple times so he could get the resupplies back to his hut.
So there's a couple of photos here in the next one of Dr. McKern's packages. These would be the foot of the Golden Stairs here, I assume?
Certainly. So as you look at the photos, you can see the engineers.
Wow.
Can you imagine being a digger and having to step up and over those?
Especially with all your gear and your gun and everything. That's going to be quite an exercise, I reckon.
During these tragic days, we worked as never before. From about 10 a.m, the first of the sick and wounded men would begin to arrive. Some of the boys would rest a while, drink all the coffee they could manage with biscuits or cake as well, and then push on. Others would just lie about, too weak to muster the willpower to go on. We would have to make a periodical checkup, then lift the boy to his feet and say, "Come on, pal. You've got to make Uberry tonight, so you must get going." My heart would ache for them as I would watch them make about 25 steps, then sit down to rest before struggling up a few more.
Can't imagine myself doing this too many times.
You can see why he was so fit.
Yeah, certainly. It was pretty tough going getting up there. Albert was nearly double my age. I'm only 21, and I think the first time Albert did this was about 42, so it's pretty disastrous that the old fella could beat me up here more times, but good on him.
One of the soldiers said of Albert Moore, "The boys worship him. He's a man to the core and as game as you can get them." If anyone said anything against him, he'd be lucky to escape with his life. It was a fitting tribute.
All right, mate. Let's have a coffee as a tribute to Albert.
Sure.
It's the end of Nathan's time with John Miles, and John wants to leave him with a farewell moment, Albert Moore style.
Another little thing that we'll have.
Christ, scones.
There's some scones.
Oh, Jesus.
And you know Albert went out of his way
Make some scones.
to make scones.
Wow.
I tipped a heap of flour into my mixing bowl and went away to secure some water and sugar, salt, etc. When I returned, the flour had come to life. It was just moving, and there was a hill in the centre of the flour. As I took a closer look at it, I discovered that the cause of the life was weevils. There were millions of them. Perhaps there were more body in these scones than in any other fare ever served up to the fighting forces. When you're hungry, sour grapes can taste sweet.
I wonder if this is how they tasted.
That's one thing I didn't mention about the scones.
Weevil infested, are they?
Yours is, mine's okay.
Ah, excellent.
It might be the end of the track for Nathan, but it's not the end of his journey. Like Albert, he's headed towards the bloodiest part of the entire campaign.
I've got no idea where I'm going or what's happening right about now. I'm just on a bus and it's driving somewhere, so it'll be interesting to see where the final stop is. I couldn't be crazy, but I think we're catching a helicopter somewhere. When I first was told that we were travelling in a helicopter, I was absolutely over the moon. I had one of the biggest grins and was so excited, it was just unreal.
This is freaking sweet. I never thought I'd be in a helicopter right about now, flying over Papua New Guinea. This is unreal.
In the small village of Naduri lives one of the last of the legends of the Kokoda track, the men they call the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels. As the campaign worsened, they carried wounded Australian soldiers up and down the mountains and tended to them with care and devotion, never deserting a wounded man, even when the combat exploded around them. Albert could not have done his work without them.
I relied on our modern day Fuzzy Wuzzies on the Kokoda track over the last few days. Always that magic hand right there to catch you. No task too big or too small for them, they're always willing. These guys are true champions.
Nathan.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm Charlie.
G'day.
I'll take you on to City Hall Man of Ovaru.
Right, awesome. Cheers. Still can't get that view. To meet Ovaru was very special for me. To meet one of the last Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels, it was just amazing to be able to shake his hand and to listen to his stories. Folks. Nathan Folks. Yeah. My great uncle, Albert Moore, was a Salvation Army welfare officer on the Kokoda Trail. He had coffee huts in Uberry and further up along the trail.
He knows when he was on the track carrying supplies, he came and he gave the biscuit and the coffee sugar. He knows. Is you okay?
Yeah, that was my great uncle. Wow, didn't expect that. That's awesome. This is a photo we have. That there is my great uncle, the coffee man.
He knows him.
So you remember Albert? The moment Ovaru recognised Albert in the photo and he just kept pointing to him and saying, "I know this man, I remember this man," it was just so amazing. Did you ever meet Albert or talk with Albert?
He said he met him, he went to see him.
It was just unbelievable to get those two pieces of history connected. It gave me a better perspective of Albert and how much the natives were so happy to carry his supplies, and I felt so honoured that such an amazing person like Ovaru knew Albert and had respect for Albert as well.
I'm on a high right about now, just flying over Papua New Guinea, flying over the Kokoda Track and meeting a Fuzzy Wuzzy Angel. This would definitely be the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. These last 2 days, just absolutely amazing.
Walking in my sleep, waking in my dreams, in the middle of the night, moving through a land.
All through the Kokoda campaign, Albert Moore had a special attachment to one group of men, the 2nd 14th Battalion.
The chaos never sleeps at all.
They regarded him as one of their own, and he returned the feeling.
Deep within
4 of these 5 officers, all of them Albert's friends, are from that battalion. Killed in action, they're buried here, along with far too many of their mates.
To visit Bamana Cemetery was such a special moment. I felt a little bit that Albert was looking over my shoulder saying, this is the right thing to be doing.
You gave me the wings to rise above it all. You gave me the strength, faith to carry on. You gave me the hope when all hope was gone. Gave me your sweet love, then that bird has flown.
Sadly, these would not be the last men Albert would lose. Worse was to come.
The chaos never sleeps at all. Images
You can tell that Albert considered these boys like his own son and loved them just as much. There's over 4,000 graves here, and Australia should not forget what these guys did to help us love the country we do now. They should never be forgotten.
The Japanese were forced back down the track to Gona. It's where we're sending Nathan.
I've just been given an Air New Guinea ticket to Popondetta. Where the hell is Popondetta?
Gona and Buna were the last battlefields of the Kokoda campaign. Like Nathan, Albert Moore flew there. The only difference was he tricked the army into flying in supplies along with him, knowing he'd need them at the battlefront. He wasn't finished in New Guinea yet. Nathan's guide at Gona is Dr. Peter Stanley, one of Australia's most distinguished military historians.
Well, now from here we're going to go to Gona, scene of the vital final battles of the Kokoda campaign, where Albert Moore was with the Australians, and we're going to follow in his footsteps. Excellent, lead the way.
And Nathan, we're going from Popondetta to Gona, and we're going on the very track that Albert Moore went on.
Excellent.
But he didn't go in a four-wheel drive. He walked this. It took him 4.5 hours.
Definitely would have been a smoother ride than this.
It may have been a smoother ride, but it would have been much more uncomfortable. They didn't know where the Japanese were. Wounded men coming back from the front were killed by Japanese stragglers on this road.
So how come Albert didn't travel by truck or on a jeep? He decided he'd walk.
There was basically no vehicles at all for the Australians on this front. Everybody who went to Gona walked. They slogged through the jungle. This road was a muddy track, and the mud is described as being between ankle and knee deep. Right, now Nathan, you want to know where we are?
Yeah.
We're on the beach at Gona. The Japanese had a firm base here that the Australians and Americans felt they had to destroy in order to declare victory in Papua. They had to eliminate the Japanese. And the Japanese are in bunkers, which they've been building for months around the plantations and jungle in this area. We've come to the spot where the 2nd 14th Battalion was attacking on the 29th and 30th of November. And we're about to go down this track and get to the exact spot where Albert Moore's hut was.
Wow. He always chose ideal locations. I mean, brilliant. Nice little tropical resort here, coffee hut.
I'm glad you've spotted how pleasant the view is this way.
Yeah, but
and in 1942, it looked exactly like this. And the real irony is that with this beautiful idyllic view, there's the most hideous battle happening here. Nathan, I think we can be pretty sure that it was in this area that Albert Moore set up his coffee stall.
They can be so confident it all looks the same.
It all looks the same, but from the documents, the maps, the war diaries, Albert's diary, we can be pretty sure that it's about here. The real clue is that we know that it was in the vicinity of the 2nd 14th Mortar Platoon, and that was around here. So his Papuan carriers would have built him a hut here, and it was from here that he took forward the coffee and the comforts to the troops in the front line. Where we'll go.
Yeah, sure.
Nathan, come this way with me, but be quite quiet, because we're imagining what Albert was doing at this spot. But get down, down. The Australians are in the frontline positions here, facing Japanese bunkers, 50 yards that way. Wow. Albert's hut is a couple of 100 yards back that way. He's carried hot coffee to the troops in the forward Australian positions around here. They turn around, and there's a salvo with a container of coffee. Yeah. Would you like a coffee, mate? But they go, shh, because the Japanese could hear. So you can imagine, they actually had to whisper, because if the Japanese had heard them talking, or heard the clank of a spoon and a Dixie, they would have opened fire. So he hands around the coffee and the food, and they eat it in silence, and then they give the containers back to Albert, and Albert gets up and walks very quietly away. Yeah. And then the battle starts again. This is where the battle began, and this is where some of Albert's friends were killed.
Dr. Peter Stanley really helped to bring the Battle of Gona to life. That'll be 2nd 14th, is it?
It is, 2nd 14th.
To show me where Albert's hut was, to show me the Japanese defences, and his knowledge just really helped to cement that feeling of being in Gona. Albert was very courageous and dedicated to his boys from what I've learned on this trip. Either that or he was just absolutely crazy.
The final battles at Gona were bloody and bitter. Hand-to-hand fighting, man on man. When it was over, the Australians had won, but the cost was high.
The village was destroyed, but this is the oldest bit of Old Gona village. This was the heart of the Japanese defensive position, and Albert Moore came here within an hour of the Japanese being defeated. Imagine this scene. There were literally hundreds of bodies lying around here, Japanese and Australian. The Japanese, some of them killed that day, some of them killed that hour, others had been lying putrefying for weeks, and this whole area has been shelled and mortared by the Australians. Men who'd been killed perhaps days, perhaps weeks before, and fragments of their bodies are being hurled in the air and distributed around the place. So you can imagine the smell, the sights that greet the men who push their way into this position. Parts of bodies were lying around, fragments of human beings were scattered across this landscape. So into this horrific scene comes Albert Moore, a man who doesn't fire a shot, but whose mission is peace, and he sees this horror. How does he react? Well, we know because he wrote it down. Albert was able to describe the scene and tell us how he felt.
As we entered the mission station where the enemy had made their stand, we beheld a tragic sight. One I'd not seen anything like before and would never want to again. I was told there were in the vicinity of 1,000 dead bodies. A lot were in an advanced state of decomposition. Others had died that day. We picked our way among the bodies, trying to keep the breeze where it would carry away from us the sickening stench of decaying flesh, but it was impossible to escape it all. I felt that if the world could only witness this scene, surely it would end all wars.
Picking his way beside the bodies, Albert approached this spot. This is the old destroyed Anglican mission of All Saints. Its minister had been captured by the Japanese. Two of his sisters had been killed. But what he sees here was this cross. Wow. Albert is of course a Christian. He approaches the cross and he realises, although in the middle of a battlefield, it's virtually untouched. In fact, there are only a couple of bullet holes in it.
Which is amazing to think.
It's miraculous, isn't it? So although the place has been virtually destroyed, the cross is still standing. You can imagine what that meant for him.
He would have considered that a sign, I reckon. Along this journey I learnt how Albert had done his work, but it wasn't until Gona that I finally learnt and understood as to why Albert did what he did, and that the only way he could do it was in the front line, helping these boys, spiritually, mentally and physically. It was God's work and he needed to be there for it.
So this cross at Gona is really the end point, symbolically and actually, for Albert Moore's war story. He's seen active service in the Middle East and now in Papua, and this is the point where it finishes for him, because although he stays in the Salvation Army, it's the last time he sees frontline service. So we followed him on a journey through the Second World War and it finishes here by the cross at Gona.
Rather fitting.
Fitting, exactly, yeah.
Walking in my sleep.
There were Australian soldiers among the dead, and these men of both sides had died at the foot of this great white cross.
That stood as if it were to tell men that they had lost sight of the Prince of Peace, and the cross was the only hope for the problems of mankind.
Albert Moore returned safely to his family in Australia.
I believe even though Albert never fired a gun during the war, he showed as much courage as even the greatest of the infantrymen along the front line.
When all hope was gone, gave me.
At the beginning of this search, I wanted to learn about myself and if I'd have the same tenacity, persistence and endurance that Albert did, and I've learnt that I wouldn't come close to what Albert did. Albert's story in New Guinea and in the Middle East has definitely become part of my story, and I'm very honoured and privileged to have him as one of my forefathers, and I will continue to tell his story.
The chaos never sleeps.
If I'm half the man Albert was, it'd be a great honour.
Footsteps has one last surprise for you, Nathan.
Jesus Christ, I don't know if my heart will handle anymore.
Nathan, we'd like you to have this memory box of Albert Moore's. It contains mementos from your journey in his footsteps, and we hope that in years to come it'll remind you and your family of his story and your part in it.
Are you kidding? Thank you so much. It's heavy. Wow. Jesus. That's awesome. That iconic photo everywhere you go. That's awesome. Oh, you're shitting me. You're kidding me. Oh my god. Thank you so much. That's